has finally designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern. You see, on Tuesday this week, Tuesday, October 28, 2025, around 11 a.m. Oklahoma time, that's Central Standard Time, United States, I got a call from Jesse Sutherland, the policy advisor to the senior senator from Oklahoma, Senator James Langford. That's one of the signatories to Senator Ted Cruz's bill. The message was just simple and direct. Frank, can you write a reminder to the letter sent to this office to be forwarded to the Department of State? So the Department of State, that is the office of the Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, was asking for a reminder because they don't want to act so moto. They want to act as a response to a call made by Nigerians. So I wrote that letter immediately and sent to the office of Senator James Langford. That was on Tuesday, October 28, 2025. And today, which is Friday, October 31st, 2025, by 12:29 p.m., Jesse Sunderland, the policy advisor to Senator Langford, called me. And his message was just direct. Hold on, the senator wants to speak with you. And Senator Langford was like, Frank, the president has just designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern. So I want to thank all those Nigerians who have been advocating for this, starting with my bishop, the bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Makurdi, Bishop Anagbe, and all the Reverend Fathers of Benue origin in the United States here, and very particularly to the guys at Equipping the Persecuted, very great man, Judge Saul, who has been there for Nigerian persecuted Christians, the guys at Truth Nigeria, Doug Barton, who himself was a former staff of the State Department, and Mike Arnold, and of course all the senators and the House of Rep members. Trump has officially designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, which was our call. When Yerwata happened on June 13 and 14, I told myself that Yerwata would be the catalyst for a lot of things to happen to shake the very foundation of Nigeria in the war against terrorism, especially Fulani terrorism and the genocide against Christians in Nigeria. Yerwata served as a catalyst. The killings of 13 and 14. And so I want to say, my kinsmen in their graves, they'll be happy that the world is taking an action over the genocide that has happened. But very importantly, we so much desire this country of particular concern designation because it will change a lot of things. First of all, a lot of people were asking the implications. I've said it in several of my videos. There'll be trade embargo in Nigeria, there'll be arms. They're not doing anything with the arms. They are giving arms to soldiers, and soldiers are just shooting in the sky anytime these Fulani come to kill people. Nigeria have been crying for Tucano all this while. They've given Nigeria the Tucano US, and they've done nothing to stop this. Okay, if you go through Trump's statement very well, he said, I'm hereby designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern. And that is the list of it. Observe that. He said, and that is the list. The list is the designation. The most important thing is what comes on after this designation. These guys have the list of all those guys who are doing these things. They will freeze their account. They will place a travel ban on them. They will freeze their assets all over the world. They will go after them. And when it is becoming too hot, they will intervene directly themselves, the way they release some stuff to Iran. So the way the Air Force base is just right here where the two B-2 Spirit bombers are. It's just right here. And then they will go after their transaction, their financial transaction, because most of those guys, they transact with the American dollars and they transact using Visa card and MasterCard, and so it goes to American financial institutions. They have the names of these people. These people are in the federal government of Nigeria, the sponsors of this Fulani Jihad, the genocide in Nigeria. They are in the state government as governors. They are amongst the traditional institutions, from the top echelon of the Islamic traditional institutions in Nigeria to the Emirates, all the emirs. All these chiefs around in Nasarawa State are also involved. So the United States, so every patriotic Nigeria, those of us who call for this designation as the most patriotic Nigeria, because we want a solution. The solution was at hand and the government could not use it for political correctness, still protecting the sponsors of these killings. So right now with this designation, it is a notice to the entire world that genocide of Christians is happening in Nigeria. And other countries in the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Canada will also act. So we are very happy with this designation. And right now, after this designation, we are going to continue following this matter to make sure that the other repercussions are put in place. Sanction of these guys, blocking their accounts everywhere, freezing their assets, naming them, and possibly arresting them in some other countries. So we will not relent. We want to thank everybody involved in this. We want to thank all the priests, the pastors, the religious leaders, the political leaders who were able to be brave enough to call for this. And I'll just tell you that, look, the entirety of this designation did not come so moto by President Trump or Ted Cruz just doing it on their own. It came because of our cries. And the cries continues until when the sponsors of this terrorism and genocide are all arrested and put in prison, and then our people are made to return back to their ancestral land and claim their homes and live in peace and worship in peace. That is the list of what we're saying. So when President Trump is saying this is the list, the designation is just the list, there are a lot of things coming. The sponsors should brave up. They should brace us. There are a lot of things coming. This is just the list according to President Trump. Some of us know the list. And finally, you know, these people will be talking in Nigeria. They thought they are deceiving the United States, but they are deceiving themselves. You find these people say, no, Nigeria, there's nothing like Christian genocide going on. There's peace, there's this, there's that. Look, the United States is the compendium of every intel happening in Nigeria. Everything happening up to your house. Those guys have the information. For goodness sake, you are using their technology. You are using the phone. You are using the SIM card that has the chips. You are using electronic passports, e-passports, satellite imageries. You think those of you, the sponsors, you think you make secret calls by making encrypted calls through WhatsApp? They own the WhatsApp. They own the messenger. If you want to use even satellite phones, they own it. They own this technology. They know all these things. So you begin to deceive yourself that, oh no, this is not happening. They know all these things. I've sat down with many of them. I've heard them inform me about Nigeria to the extent that I never knew Nigeria existed that way. So once again, we want to thank President Trump very well. We want to thank everybody involved in this.
A diplomatic bomb exploded this week when the United States re-added Nigeria to its country of particular concern CPC list. There's a formal US declaration that the government is failing to protect religious freedom in the country. And President Donald Trump followed with blunt language that US could step in, including military options, if alleged mass attacks on Christians weren't checked. The move and the rhetoric lit up Abuja and Washington, setting off a cascade of denials, threats, and frantic diplomacy. But amidst the government's denial, watch this video.
27 Christians were slaughtered just 15 miles west of Jos, the capital of Plateau State. And of course, that population included 11 children below the ages of 7, including a 2-month-old. The last time we had a video, an interview regarding that particular incident, I reported that there was a 3-year-old that was killed. But no, that wasn't the youngest of the victims. There was a 3-month-old, there was a 2-month-old, there was an 8-month-old, there was a 1-year-old, there were 2 years old. Actually, the oldest actually of the 11 children that comprised or that made up the 27 death toll, the 27 victims were below the ages of 7. And like you said, the Nigerian government is trying really hard, is struggling, I would say, to deny what has been happening. But what they cannot deny is the reality, the facts, the evidences, right? So you can deny that Christians are not being killed, but locations don't lie. The mass graves don't lie. Christians will not go and gather to bury empty caskets or to just wrap some substance, maybe wood or something, in white fabric just to put on the ground and just claim that is an instance of genocide. You cannot deny that. You
massacre Christians if they say they kill Muslims. Muslims are being killed. By who? By Muslims. To be outside performing prayer every day, and they expect us to silence. Now it's an order. Nigerian government cannot openly and deny there is no massacre, there is no genocide of Christians in Nigeria. And look at it today. Is there any Muslim here? United Nations, I know you're watching me. American Senate, you are watching what I'm doing, I'm saying here. Special advisor to Trump. Now, please tell Trump to save our life in Nigeria. They are killing Christians in Nigeria, massacre Christians. If they say they kill Muslims, Muslims are being killed. By who? By Muslims.
The US president did not just wake up and decided to intervene. There have been several appeals from people who feel abandoned by their own country to protect them. Nigerians in all these affected areas have called severally, but no response. The attacks have been consistent with little or no response from the government. It is not only in just Plateau State. In other parts of the country, what about Yowata in Benue State, where the government denied that such attack took place until social media activists like VDM exposed the truth? We watched the video how VDM went there down to Benue State to begin to go from one person to expose those things. The US administration formally placed Nigeria on the CPC list for religious freedom violations, citing persistent attacks on Christians and gaps in government protection. The designation revives a status that had been removed in the past and opens the door to sanctions or aid restrictions. President Trump amplified the movement with unusual muscular language, publicly suggesting that the US might consider troop deployment or airstrikes, cutting aid if Nigeria doesn't act. That escalation turned a diplomatic rebuke into a security standoff between the US and Nigeria. Nigeria's government pushed back, calling the claims misleading and stressing on national sovereignty while reaffirming its commitment to religious freedom and security cooperation, even as state spokespeople warned against external coercion. The presidency has also publicly denied reports that President Bola Tinubu was immediately traveling to Washington for crisis talks. This is as much about domestic politics in the US as it is about violence in Nigeria. Hardline voices in the US, comprising some lawmakers and conservative activists, have pressed Washington to act on what they describe as Christian persecution in Nigeria. From the prelude video, you can see that the government denial and lack of persecution of perpetrators of these attacks have pushed Nigerians in diaspora to fight for justice for their families who have suffered heavily on account of the attacks. Most of the people who fought the outcome, who are saying that is the Nigerian diaspora. For those of them that are fighting this cause, it is justice for the souls of their departed loved ones slaughtered by the attackers, since they cannot get it from their own country. No justice. That pressure helped to push the CPC designation, and several Republican lawmakers publicly celebrated the move. But inside Nigeria, the narrative is contested. Observers and some reporters note that Nigeria's insecurity is complex and driven by insurgency, banditry, communal clashes, and competition over land and resources, and that victims are both Christians and Muslims, depending on the region. Oversimplifying the conflict as a one-sided religious genocide risks misdiagnosis and reckless policy choices. So we need to agree that both the Muslims and Christians are affected. But what does it matter to Nigeria and Nigerians about the CPC listing or designation? A CPC designation is more than a label. We must take note of that. It legally authorizes the US to pursue a menu of penalties ranging from targeted Magnitsky sanctions, unnamed officials, and courts and humanitarian aid, though it doesn't automatically trigger military action. Still, when a US president publicly signals willingness to step in, the diplomatic cost and uncertainty rise dramatically. If Trump follows through with his threat, let us x-ray the positive and negative that this will erupt. The potential positives, if Washington asks carefully, is that there will be pressure for reforms. Targeted sanctions and the threat of aid restriction can be leveraged to force meaningful steps towards better protection for at-risk communities. There will be persecutions of perpetrators and more transparency from security services that could produce quicker and tangible improvement for the victims. For international attention, the US action focuses on global media. Donors and multilateral institutions on Nigeria's security and governance problems will possibly unlock technical help and funding for policing, justice sector reform, and community reconciliation programs. But what are the potential negatives, you may ask? Definitely, where there are positives, there should be negatives. There is fear of sovereignty backlash and domestic polarization if Donald Trump goes through with this. Public threat of military action feeds anti-Western narratives and empower hardliners inside Nigeria who argue that external pressure is an imperialist intrusion. That could make Abuja dig in rather than cooperate. There could be possible escalation and instability. The military intervention or overt US strikes as an option that Trump explicitly floated will be explosive. It could inflame insurgent groups, radicalize populations, and spread into wider conflicts with unpredictable regional spillovers. The Chadian president is aware of the possible regional spillover, hence the immediate closure of their border with Nigeria. They are preempting the event already, the action. We have seen such in some other countries where there were US interventions. It has happened in the past. Reuters and major actors have also flagged the danger of that rhetoric. Again, there will be economic fallout. Sanctions and aid cut will hurt ordinary Nigerians. When you cut the aids coming to Nigeria, what do you think will happen to the ordinary ones? Suspension of no humanitarian assistance and targeted financial restrictions can undermine health, development, and economic programs and sap investment confidence in the country. And that will impact negatively on the ordinary Nigerians. The dangers of selective optics, that is framing killings primarily as a persecution of Christians, when evidence shows both Christians and Muslims are affected, risk fueling sectarian narratives that make reconciliation harder and they encourage retaliatory violence. There are two overlapping critics worth calling out: the substance versus spectacle. Critics are right to call Trump's military talk incendiary. When you threaten, threatening force in a sovereign state publicly and without clear multilateral backing, risks turning a human right or consequence tool into a headline-grabbing stunt that accomplishes little on the ground, but much to inflame tensions. The cultural route, in my opinion, is diplomacy, conditional aid, investigative support, and joint security programs are likely to protect civilians sustainably. Available evidence of weaponizing region for politics is one of the factors. Some US commentators pushing the protest Christians line downplay the complex local drivers of violence in Nigeria. They have to be holistic in the cause. When religious identity is simplified into a binary persecutor or persecuted story, the policy becomes brittle. It caters to partisan audiences, risks selective enforcement, and can be used as political theater rather than a basis for effective intervention. Having said that, dismissing victim suffering is also irresponsible. The correct response lies between indifference and militaristic grandstanding. Evidence-led investigations, calibrated sanctions on clearly culpable actors, capacity assistance to Nigerian security services, and consistent political pressure for accountability could help out. So what should the federal government do going forward and fast to remedy the situation? The federal government should own the problem publicly. Not denying. Acknowledge victims across communities and present a transparent action plan on prosecutions, victim support, and regional security coordination. One aspect they should take. Denials alone won't shift US policy. It wouldn't, because they have the facts. Before, US is not a country like Nigeria that they arrest people before investigation. The federal government should accept targeted technical help. Invite neutral investigators and UN or US technical teams to audit responses and recommend reforms, showing that cooperation can blunt punitive measures. The government should engage public diplomacy, explain the nuance of Nigerian security landscape to international audiences so that policy responses are proportionate and targeted. The CPC designation is a diplomatic wake-up call. If used intelligently as a lever for reform and accountability, it could push Nigeria to protect civilians better. But if turned into military adventurism or partisan theater, it risks deepening violence, eroding sovereignty, and punishing ordinary Nigerians. The real test will be what follows the words, which is measured sanctions and technical help, or empty threats that create chaos. Drop your comment, share, and subscribe for more.